You good?
Let's go.
Welcome back to the show. It's another episode of Not Without Right, a Shakespeare in the Public Domain podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Monique Williams, and today I am joined by Bay Area acting legend, everybody's Uncle Mike. Yeah, you knew I was going to embarrass you. Friends, we have Michael James Asberry on the show today for a little talk about Shakespeare and August Wilson. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Dawn. Super Dawn. Dawn of a new era. Dawn is tough on Greece.
Oh my gosh. Let me think. Did I really want to do this? Yeah. Okay.
Too late now. I'm here.
Mike, we'll start where I always start. Do you have a first memory or early recollection? How did you first get introduced to Shakespeare?
I do have an early memory. I think I was in like the 9th or 10th grade and in, high school English class. And we were reading Julius Caesar. We were reading it in class. And, I was a good student. I can say that, with all confidence. So, I did what was required to excel in the class. So I read it and I put, my foot in it as much as I could at that time. And I remember my teacher coming up to me after that. And he said, you remind me of Laurence Olivier. And I was like, thank you. And then I went to play basketball, I think, after that, because I never gave it a second thought. But that was the first clear memory that I have of Shakespeare. And it didn't grab me. I wasn't like moved by it. It wasn't like, this is the spark that's going to get me to move in this direction. That wasn't it. But that's my earliest memory of
Did you know who Laurence Olivier was at the time?
No, I had no idea who he was. It wasn't until several years later that I learned who he was. I was probably well into adulthood when I discovered who he was and about his history and his background and films that I had actually seen him in that I wasn't aware of, that I became aware of who he was. And then that comment that my teacher made took on a whole different meaning after that.
What meaning did it take on for you in adulthood once you knew who Laurence Olivier was?
I was really flattered that he made a connection between me at that time and this pillar of the acting and performance world in the Shakespeare realm. So I was really flattered once I found out who it was. And even then, it didn't spark me to want to act at that time. I was just like, well, that's great. That's really a compliment of the highest order. So what time is practice? I was still on my hoop dream thing. So
I was gonna ask you if by then you had pivoted to acting. So so let's go back, because now you've mentioned basketball a couple times. You're sitting there on a virtual court, and I've heard you say
that. Yeah, that's.
And I know you a little bit outside of Zoom squares, and so I know that you had hoop dreams.
Absolutely,
so,
yes.
So just tell me a little bit about, your youth and what you were ambitious to do and all of the things that led to a career shift to acting.
Well, I fell in love with basketball when I was probably 8 years old. Had a cousin that came to live with us from Gary, Indiana. My cousin Russell, God rest his soul. And he played ball, and he had all the basketball magazines, and it was just such a integral part of his life that I just embraced it. And I fell in love with it. And so I wasn't very good at it when I first started. And so like fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, I started to pick up a little bit. By the seventh grade, I was well on my way to becoming a pretty good ball player. And after that, I had NBA professional aspirations after that. And so that was what I wanted to do. At the same time, my father was a stern advocate for education. He was all about articulation. He was all about all about being the smartest guy in the room, which I didn't necessarily think I needed to do that, but that was what he thought needed to happen. And so I took education very seriously. But my MBA pursuit was the ultimate goal for me at that time. That was what I really wanted to do.
When did the MBA stop being the ultimate pursuit?
I tore my Achilles tendon playing ball in college, and just a random accident. And at the time that I played, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, a Achilles tendon injury was pretty devastating, and it changed how I moved and how I played. And so I knew after that it would be a real stretch to make it to the NBA. There are a lot of different things would have had to go really, really well for me to make it to the NBA after that.
So how did you go from being an NBA hopeful to a professional actor here in the Bay Area?
That's probably the strangest accident or coincidence that I could ever imagine in my life. I was a really shy kid. I was painfully shy as a kid. And I remember being in the fourth grade, and one of my classmates was running for student government. And he asked me to make his nomination speech in the auditorium. And I went up there and I stood behind the podium and I looked out into the cafeteria and I completely froze and couldn't speak. And the teacher had to escort me off the stage. So the fact that I'm doing this now is still kind of mind blowing to me. But I had an older brother who passed away, God bless him, my brother Rick, and he was the artist of the family. And he drew and he sang and he danced and he would he wrote poetry, and he would turn the TV off and he would do all the dialogue, and he'd have us all laughing hysterically. And he was the artistic inspiration in the family. And that touched me, but it wasn't something that I felt like I could do. But my voice changed when I was young. And so I've sounded pretty much like I do now since I was 11. And I kept, over the years, people would say, I hear your voice, you got this voice, you got to do something. You do something with that voice. And when I was in college, a friend of mine, classmate, said, whenever you're on the court, I could always hear you. And so I said, let me try to do something with that. And that's when but even then, it didn't turn anything in me until I was probably in my early 30s. It came later for me, much later for me.
Okay. Yes. Well, now it makes sense, right? Why your teacher said that there was something about you that was like Laurence Olivier, because he's very famous for his voice, for that timbre and his elocution. Yes.
It made sense after the fact. Yes.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, great, whatever at the time, but it made a lot of sense after the fact. Yes.
So because you had gotten these compliments on your voice all this time, you sort of started pursuing that a little bit, like the voice work. Yes. Like,
yes.
And
very
and then
just and
then you ended up in a full on play.
Yeah.
Now I happen to know, because we've had this conversation, but would you share with the viewers, the listeners, what your very first professional stage play was?
My very first professional stage play was Shakespeare's Twelfth Night.
Yes. What role did you play?
I played the captain. I think, of the ship that was coming to Illyria, and I played a guard later on in the play, and so I had two different roles, and it was then when I first got the role in Twelfth Night that I began to appreciate Shakespeare at that time because I dug into it, and even though my roles were, I didn't have a lot of dialogue in the roles that I played, I memorized the script like I was doing the whole thing. And it was then that I started to really appreciate the language. I was like, wow, this Orsino dude he got bars, man. If music be the food of love, play on. And then there's the iambic pentameter that I wasn't familiar with at the time. I was like, oh, there's this rhythm to this, and there's this eloquent language. And that's when I really started to kind of get into it.
I love that. I love that you were essentially, you said in your 30s, a man in your 30s, coming to sing. You're in your 30s playing Spear Carrier number 1, which is like routinely the like apprentice company role, the like college intern role, right? And here you were, a full grown man,
37.
Who never studied or trained up until that point, like as an actor, and you're thrown in and you're doing Shakespeare.
Yeah, and when I look back on it, it's interesting how many things were kind of pointing in that direction. Because when I first went off to college, I'm playing college basketball, and I had a work study job. My first work study job was building the sets in the theater department. First work study job. So I'm in the theater. And my coach at the time, assistant coach, used to say, you ought to learn how to, work the lights. So you should get on figure out how the sound works. You might want to think about this whole theater, experience that you're getting, building these backdrops. And I was saying, I'm going to the NBA, man. I don't have time for that. This is a work study job, and that job is over. I'm heading to the gym. So that happened. And when I was in college, I loved theater. I've always loved theater. And I saw a production. One of my classmates invited me to see her perform in a production of Romeo and Juliet, which I happen to know is your favorite play.
It is.
I know. And so I saw that, and I appreciated it, enjoyed it, but nothing about it made me want to do it. I just didn't see myself doing it.
I want to pause here, and because we've worked together on a few shows, and when I direct, I love my basketball analogies. Yes. I love them so much. And until working with you, nobody had really corrected me. People just let me go on about my, get it in the paint, full course press. People just let me, pick and roll. They just, pump fake. They just let me have my basketball analogies as I was directing. And you corrected me. You offered some gentle corrections about how
gentle correction, yes.
Very gentle about how some of my application might be off. However, I still maintain, because I'm definitely not the basketball person that you are, but I am a fan of the game. And I still maintain that I think basketball is a great sport for directors to study. I would say it's a great sport for actors to study. Basketball is so alive, and there's so much kinetic response that has to happen. You've heard me say many times that my favorite player of all time ever is Magic Johnson, because he always knew exactly where every other player was on the court. He always knew where his man was. And I love that type of, not only a lot of athleticism, but awareness in an actor that has that sort of they know where their body is in space, and they know the proximity of other bodies in space. And there's just a sort of dynamism that I feel like basketball has a lot in common with live theater. Yes. And so I just wonder, Where do you see similarities? Where do you feel like basketball has served you at making that shift into becoming a professional athlete?
Well, you named a lot of the aspects already. Just
I stole your thunder.
You did. So I'm gonna just pass on that. But no, everything that you said is absolutely spot on, and some of your basketball analogies have been spot on. You actually hit the nail on the head a few times. But it wasn't until I had been acting for several years that I actually made the connection. I didn't make it right away. I thought that they were completely different worlds and there was nothing really, there was no common ground. But then I found it in the awareness, as you had mentioned before, and knowing where everybody is supposed to be, in the kind of orchestrating it, in the preparation. Because if you don't know what you're doing before you hit the stage, you're going to be in a world of trouble when you get there. And so there's the preparation. And what I think the one thing that really stuck out to me where acting and basketball kind of came together is I remember committing fouls in games. And if I didn't think that I caught a foul, that I committed the foul, I would try to convince the referee why that wasn't a foul. I didn't do that. I was here. I had this much distance, which is a performance. You're trying to convey, no, that's not what happened. You saw the wrong thing. This is what happened. This is what actually happened. Whether I was right or wrong, that was kind of a response as a ball player. And I was like, well, that's kind of acting too. And playing in front of an audience is a performance. Mm-hmm. I didn't even make that connection because it felt like performing in front of an audience when you're acting. I thought that was something totally different from performing in front of an audience as an athlete. But it's the same thing. And if you're focused on the audience, then you're not concentrating on the task at hand. And telling the story is the most important element when you're on the stage, on the screen, on the microphone. And that's I had to come around to that. And then when that happened, a light went off in my head and then I could really commit to what I was doing, because before that, I was kind of, while it was fun, I was kind of going through the motions. But that really struck a nerve and it landed in my consciousness.
Well, that's so great that you mentioned the response to the audience. Of course, and with sports, we often say the crowd, the fans. We don't always say the audience, but that's so great. Because something that I always am like, gosh, how hard when you are from the away team and you're at the free throw line and the home crowd is booing you. They're waving those things to try and distract you. They are just making a mess. And you have to know how to focus and tune that out, while at the same time knowing when it's appropriate to draw that energy in, feed on that energy, when it's appropriate to play with them, throw them a little look. Steph, he knows how to work that crowd and give us the little wink and the thing while he's chewing on his mouth guard and
yeah,
right. So yes, that is definitely an aspect of it that I hadn't considered until you were just saying it right now. So thank you, Michael.
Yes.
What are some of the other Shakespeare plays or Shakespearean roles that you've had the opportunity to do?
Now I gotta think. Let's see. My first Shakespeare was Twelfth Night. And then, Romeo and Juliet. I played my second Shakespeare play was Romeo and Juliet. I got to play Lord Capulet. Oh, I loved that so much. That was a fantastic experience. I played Romeo and Juliet. I've done Midsummer Night's Dream. I did, what's the one I did during the pandemic that's not coming to my mind right now? Pericles during the pandemic. And let's see, there's something I did. I can't remember the directors for this particular play.
What could it be?
Shakes. Let's see. Lear. The King, Marcus Gardley's adaptation of Lear with you and Eric Ting at
Yes.
Yes.
I wanna pick up on Pericles, because that production that San Francisco Shakespeare did, because like you said, it was during the pandemic. It was sort of like the second year of the pandemic. And so it was a hybrid production and they did it episodically.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear from you what it was like to work on that. Cause I know you were like, each actor had like a green screen in their living room, you know? So, so what was that Pericles process like?
It was interesting, and I think that I kind of had an advantage because I came in the second year that they did it virtually. So they had a chance to work out some of the kinks and some of the things that they felt like they could improve on from the first time that they did it. So I had that advantage. But it was fun. I actually enjoyed it. It was fun. It was, I had the setup here in the living room, and there were grids on the floor where you would stand for certain moments. And the camera was set up there, and I had my lights and the whole thing. It was a really interesting experience to do it that way, and because we were doing it on Zoom, I guess it was, if I remember correctly. And so you had to time the dialogue because there's a slight delay that you had to plan for. But I was with a lot of people that I know and have worked with before and love and appreciate, and so it was fun. I actually enjoyed it. I had a really good time doing it.
Now you've had the opportunity to do TV, film, voiceover. So you are a very well-rounded actor at this point. How did that compare, though, to acting in your living room against a green screen with with your scene partners just disembodied through a computer?
Well, that takes me back to my childhood because I did that all the time. I would play alone and I would create characters, and I had like action figures, and I give them, names and voices, and they do different things. And me and my brother Rick, those are things that we did together. We would play that way. And so it was kind of virtual. It took me back to that era in my life. And it made it fun. It was like being a kid again. It made it really, really playful.
Oh, I've never heard anyone talk about comparing that sort of like composite mocap, essentially it's motion capture, as child's play. That makes it sound so delightful as opposed to stressful. Or like, wait, where in space is the thing that I can't see, but the audience is seeing because it's a virtual background, So to think of it as child's play, I think it's really great. I guess certainly on films like Avatar, where they're doing the CGI and the composite and all of that stuff, and you see the actors in those motion capture suits with foam noodles, they look like they're having a good time. It's just very disorienting because it's like, this isn't real. But when the audience sees it, I will be holding a like battle star. I don't know what a battle star is, but you get what I'm saying? Like a thing. They'll be holding like a thing. And then Pericles culminated in some live performances.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was also like an arc.
Yes. Yeah, there was the arc to the story, and I wasn't in the part of the production that was performed outdoors, but I did have a chance to go and see that, and so it all came together at where did I go? I think I went to the production they had in Mountain View. I think is where I went to see it at the amphitheater out there.
With this exception of your digital Pericles, has all your Shakespeare been outdoor?
I think so. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, I think Romeo and Juliet was outdoors. Yeah, the first experience was our 12th night was outdoors. Yes, they've all been outdoors. I've never done an indoor Shakespeare. Yes, to this point.
So let's talk about Lear a little bit because it was Marcus Gardley's adaptation of King Lear. So So it was in large part Shakespeare's story, and then Marcus did his Marcus thing, and I think he's one of our greatest living playwrights.
Without a doubt.
And then in the process, of course, it was like working a new play with like these old characters that we like, okay, we know these characters from the Shakespeare play, but we're in a new play process. So I would love to just hear, you played Gloucester. So, tell us a little bit what your process was, what the experience was like for you, with just the small caveat, in the words of Miss Badu, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive with my shit.
I was like, what Badu quote is she going to use? Okay, gotcha. It turned out to be the most beautiful production I think that I've been a part of aesthetically. It looked so good when I had a chance to see pictures, and it's just I have such vivid memories and beautiful memories of hearing Valina Brown's voice when she sang that opening song at the top of it. The process was hard because it's a new play, and so it kept changing. And I'm a senior, and so the constant change part, I'm like, oh, okay, let's start over again. Oh, okay, take this out, put that in. Take this out, put that in. So that was always a little challenging to me, but it was the challenge is where the growth comes in, and so that happened, and I have fond memories of that production. I really do. I just enjoyed the performance of it, the sound of it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Marcus Gardley is a brilliant, gifted playwright, and I felt like it was in the hands of the right people.
How do you feel about Gloucester and what's going on for him, like his character and that sort of subplot with his children?
That was tough to play because it's one of those roles that kind of goes against character for me. It went so far against character where he mistreated one of his children so badly. And that's something I can't even fathom that. But he did it. And that's the challenge as an actor that you embrace and that you grow from. It was tough. And I didn't particularly like him, Gloucester, the character, the individual. I loved playing it, but I didn't particularly like the character. But it was, he got his, in a very hostile way. And then he comes around. He comes around and he sees the error of his ways as the production goes on. So it was challenging. But I'm really grateful for that opportunity and grateful for that experience. But it was not easy. It was difficult to embrace that.
How do you play a character you don't like? Like as an actor, what tools do you have? What do you rely on?
That's him. That's his story to tell. It's not mine. That has nothing. He didn't consult me for any of his behavioral choices. He didn't say, hey, Mike, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about, like, I love this job, but this one, not so much. What do you think? He didn't consult me about that. And so I just focused on trying to bring the truth to his character, to be who he was and where he was, and to play it as authentically as I could. Embrace the story, tell the story. I say that to myself all the time. Just tell the story. It's on the page. What you think and what you feel. Yeah, but that's him. That's not you.
I know that truthfulness and authenticity is really important to you.
Yes.
Not only as an actor, but certainly as a patron of the art, as a film critic.
Yep.
As somebody who doesn't have any formal training, right? You were not a theater major. You didn't go to MFA. How did you cultivate this skill set for, being truthful in the moment?
Well, I know what I like to watch. And so I know, and again, I've been watching film and TV and going to theater since I was a kid. So I know what I enjoy. And the performances and productions that I've enjoyed are things that I can connect to. It's like, oh, I believe that. Oh yeah, I see that. Oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Even if it's fantasy, if you can make me believe it, then I can embrace it. Could you repeat part of the question again? Because there was something else I wanted to say that I just lost.
I asked, how do you cultivate that skill for truthful acting without formal training?
I've also had the benefit of working with incredible talent. And because I came into it late, because I didn't have all this formal training, which is why when you asked me to do this with you, I was like, well, I didn't go to school for this. So what am I going to talk about? That was the first thing that I thought. But I've had the benefit of working with incredible artists and directors and doing the work of some gifted playwrights. And so by watching, and I absorb like a sponge. I watch what everybody does. I watch how they come onto the stage. I watch what they're doing when their character's not speaking, when their character's not moving. How does that stillness, what are they doing when they're doing that? How do they articulate? How do they mumble their words? When they drop a line, how do they adjust to that? And so I watched and I learned, and I was like, I don't want to be the weak link. And fear is a motivator. Fear is an absolute motivator. I was like, I don't want to be the one who sucks on stage. I don't want to be that person. And so I put extra effort into making it work and to making it look real and good. And if I don't know, I'll ask people. Many of my colleagues I have called, like, I'm trying to figure this out. What do you think? And they've been gracious enough to walk me through it. So
I love that. Because of course I have too many degrees and continue to work on them. And I believe in training, and I believe.
You think you know everything.
Okay.
I had to throw that line. I had to use that line at some point.
So I really believe in training, and I think that that training isn't just something that happens, in a schoolhouse. Training isn't just something that that you have to go to the classroom. There's so much to experiential wisdom. There's so much to experiential knowledge, to work in the company of great people and to pick up on that, like you said. And I feel like, speaking of autodidactic traits, or, that this is a great place to sort of pivot to Mr. August Wilson, who, never even finished public high school. So talk about formal training. I mean, he taught himself.
Self-taught, yes.
And then did like you did, went on to study alongside greats by way of experience, by way of going into playwriting workshops, and but not necessarily like, oh, I'm gonna get my MFA in playwriting. Which no knock to MFAs in playwriting. That might be my next degree, get an MFA in playwriting. Michael, how many August Wilson plays have you done?
Let's see. I did, my first August Wilson was 7 guitars. And then King Hedley the second. And then Fences. And then 2 Trains. I think I've only done 4. I want to do the entire canon. My goal is to do all 10. If I count how many times I've done something twice, I might already have 10. But because I know I've done 7 guitars twice. I've done Fences, I think, 3 or 4 times. and King Hedley and Two Trains. Yes.
So people often compare or certainly hold in equal esteem Shakespeare and August Wilson. And I have heard you articulate before that the Wilson canon is one that you do hope to complete.
Yes.
What is it about August that has that draw for you?
He spoke directly to me. Like he was, I saw Fences for the first time, I think it was like the mid 90s when I saw Fences for the first time. I hadn't started acting yet. And I remember sitting in that audience and watching that play and saying, this is my father's story. That's my grandfather. Troy Maxson was my grandfather. Corey was my dad. It's a story I had heard. My dad used to talk about. He said, yeah, my grandfather, he worked out there, and he's like, yeah, you need to come here to the steel mill and help me pay some of these bills. And my dad worked at the steel mill, I think, during the summer. He was like, well, that's what I don't want to do. And he my dad ended up going to a college on a basketball scholarship out of high school. And he left Gary, Indiana, and didn't want to go back. He's like, I'm out. But the way that Troy related to Corey and loved him the best way he knew how, based on how his father treated him, which is a world different than the way he treated Corey. It was just it just landed. And every August Wilson piece that I've done before and that I've read, there's that thread that runs through them that follows the path of my family from Mississippi to Chicago, from Mississippi to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, from Mississippi to Chicago to Gary, Indiana to Pittsburgh, California for me. And so it just felt like he was speaking directly to me. And I remember walking out of the theater thinking, that might have been the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And
do you remember where you saw that?
Lorraine Hansberry Theatre, San Francisco. And I don't remember who was in it because at that time I wasn't clocking that at that time. I wasn't paying attention to who was in it and anything like that. But it spoke directly to me. And then later on is when I started to make a connection between Shakespeare and August Wilson. I was like, oh, so when I did Fences, I was like, oh, so got it. This is kind of his Hamlet. Okay, got it. This might be his Macbeth. Okay, I drew some parallels at that time. And I was like, Shakespeare was a prolific playwright of his time and has sustained ever since. August has taken that torch and he's going to move forward with that. But he spoke directly to me.
What Wilson character that you played has been like your favorite?
That is so hard. The first one that comes to mind is Troy. I played Troy in Fences. That's the one that I coveted the most. But I loved Red Carter in Seven Guitars. I loved that character. I loved Holloway in Two Trains Running. I don't know. That's really difficult to say. I can't say. I guess it would depend on what day you ask. Yeah.
So because you started acting at a certain time in your life, and then you just got introduced. Well, you were introduced to August Wilson before you started acting, but by the time you started acting, you were in a certain age demographic already. Are there some August Wilson roles, like for the younger cat, that you wish you had the opportunity to play?
Oh my God, yes. both of the younger male characters in Two Trains Running. Was that Wolf and
Sterling?
And Sterling. Oh, what I wouldn't give to play those two roles at any time. Yes, yes, those two definitely I would love to play. Um, Actually, thinking of another playwright whose work I would love to do that I think that I've aged out of, Terrell Alvin McRaney. The Brothers Size, The Brothers Size, Ogun Size. I would play that in a heartbeat, but I'm probably Ogun's grandfather at this point, so I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen. But that's a fantastic role.
One of the things that I think is really wonderful about August and why I think you will get the opportunities to complete your canon is one of the things that I think is really cool opportunity for actors with Shakespeare is that you can grow with the characters. So you can go from being a Corey, then maybe you're Lion. Right. And then the next thing you know, you are Troy or Bono, or you are Holloway, or you are Toledo after, maybe 20 years ago, you play Levy, know? So I think, especially for Black men, yes. I think it's such a gift that you as an actor can age with these roles. Yes. And so there are still many that are available to you. Yes. Which are the ones that you are still hopeful to get on your punch card?
Seth in Joe Turner's Come and Gone. That one I definitely want to play. Toledo in which one is that?
Ma Rainey.
Ma Rainey, thank you, Ma Rainey. I was going to say the piano lesson, but that's Ma Rainey. I want to play Headley in Seven Guitars. Headley, Stool Pigeon in King Henry II. So those are the ones that come freshly to mind that I still want to play. Actually, I want to play Canewell in Seven Guitars as well. He's got a monologue in there that I absolutely love. Always did believe in love. That's I have to do that at some point. It's a must.
What do you think of August's women in these plays and how he was writing women?
When I did King Hedley, I remember listening to that, to the Tanya monologue, night in, night out. And I was like, I was, during the read-through, I remember being blown away at the read-through for that. So I was like, he has a gift for writing for women. Now, he could have written, maybe he could have written more for women, but I think that he certainly had the knack for it. There was perspective that he had that I thought was valid and important. But there are so few female characters in his work. I think that's difficult to see. But he's from a different era, from a different time, as I am, and so I relate. But I certainly see where there's. I like the characters that he has written. I haven't seen a female character that he wrote that I did not like, or that I didn't appreciate and respect in the productions. Yeah,
I think he also has some incredible female characters. Also, the ratio of women to men is low.
Yeah,
and
mighty low. Yeah.
And I had an opposite experience from you in that I wanted to be an actor from a very early age when I was really young. Mm. And when I was introduced to August, I was still too young to play, so I kept waiting to grow up to play those women. And then by the time I got to be the right age to play really almost any of them, I had sort of shifted already to directing. But, you know, if anybody's out there and they would like to give me a go, I got a good rose in me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I could do it. I love, like you said, I love the words that he puts in their mouths.
Yes.
And then as an academic, I love in the classroom to go in and tease it out just in terms of, are these women emasculating? Did he mean for them to be emasculating? What does it mean if it feels like the women don't get to be as three-dimensional as the men? Is there a little misogynoir sneaking up? But also what it would mean to deliver some of these super powerful monologues, like Tanya's monologue in King Hedley, like Rose, like Violin, Seven Guitars. I mean, just the potency. And when I was a young actor, I mean, I definitely had like my staple Wilson monologue that I brought with me to audition.
Right.
You know, they asked you for those two contrasting pieces. And I definitely was serving some Seven Guitars. I was like, it ain't here. What you remember, what you're looking for, it ain't even here no more. Like, I was serving, okay?
I have no doubt. I have no doubt that you were serving. Or is it giving? Is that what you were giving?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'd have to ask a Jen Zoomer. You know, I'd have to get one of them to correct me because I've been told that I use giving and sending and serving wrong.
Okay. Well, I consult with my daughter and the youth, so
yeah, we'll see. Your daughter is an elder millennial, so at this point, even she's out of touch.
She's learning that now. Yeah, she's learning that.
Now she's senior. You know what I'm saying?
I tell her she's my age now, so it's like, you know, we're contemporaries.
What do you think of this project of Mr. Denzel Washington's to get all of these Wilson plays on film?
I love the idea, and I also want to say that I'm available. So let me put that out there. But I love the idea of that being done. I've heard of so many different institutions that pledged to do that, and for one reason or another, weren't able to. And I remember counting on that. Oh, they're going to do all 10. Well, I'm going to make sure I keep this relationship cultivated. Oh, they're doing all 10. I know I can get it done now because between the two theaters that had made a pledge to do this, let's get it done. I don't know that that's on the table anymore. I know it's not for one theater in particular because they no longer exist. And so I love the fact that Denzel is doing it on film. I think it's a bold move. I think it's a revolutionary move, and I love that he's doing it. I fully embrace it. Can't wait to see what he does next.
Have you enjoyed the Three Fences, Ma Rainey, and A Piano Lesson?
I have. I absolutely have. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was an earlier film already, A Piano Lesson, with Charles Dutton.
I saw that. Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So we did have that one, but now it's so great and at least the intention to make them all. And since with this, the last one, Denzel collaborated with his children on Piano Lesson, I'm like, well, maybe they'll pick up the mantle to make sure that all 10 of these plays get done. And maybe they will have a willingness to like their father, know when it's appropriate to direct, to be the lead, to just be a producer, that they will like have the mind like him to put the right talent together to make sure that it happens. And I've loved to, you know, I know with films, there's so many producers. I'm sure there's so many people's names in the credits that I'm not paying attention to. And Denzel gets gets all the credit for like, he's the one. And so I don't actually know how much money Denzel put on the line or didn't. But I don't know that part. What I do know is that, he directed and starred in Not Fences.
Right.
And then with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, George C. Wolfe directed that. And that's a very different energy. And George C. Wolfe is not one of these sort of like August Wilson legacy bearers. George C. Wolfe, perhaps because he does so much musicals or because he's queer, he has not necessarily in the live theater space been associated with Wilson's work so much. But with this Ma Rainey's film, he was one of the generative artists on that. And Ruben Santiago Hudson did the screenplay. And then with this piano lesson, we see really like the younger generation. I don't know, maybe they're like my age. I don't know how old the Washington children are. They're probably my peer group. But we see that like his sons, kind of take up the mantle. And so I also like that, that there's, from how I see it, there hasn't been any gatekeeping. And I experienced that in professional theater, there is a lot of gatekeeping around Wilson's work and a lot of sort of barriers to entry in terms of who has the anointing, who has permission. And as August's peers start to age up, I think it's nice to be able to see the baton get passed and to be able to see more women able to direct the Wilson plays, younger generations,
Yes. And what a blessing to have your whole family as a part of this production of Piano Lesson. I mean, I think his son directed it. The other son, John David, is a star in it, and I think his daughter,
one of his daughters is one of the producers.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, man.
Yeah,
huge.
Yeah.
Lesson.
This will air soon, so it will it'll sort of be right there in the midst of award season, and I feel like Piano Lesson was overlooked.
Not for me. And I get to vote in these SAG Awards, so not for me.
Great. Because I didn't see a lot of nominations. Though I have heard some of the criticism from people, particularly theater people who know the play very well on the page. Who take umbrage with some of the like directorial choices, and that criticism is not lost on me. I think it's valid. I think it's very valid criticism, especially in regards to like adding a prologue that Wilson didn't script. And I still thought that it was beautiful on film. I still thought the cinematography, the lighting, Daniel Deadweiler, it out. I mean, just the cast was stupendous. I mean, just like all of those guys just blew me away. They were just all so Corey and Ray and Sam and Michael. It was an embarrassment of riches to watch. So I had hoped to see it feature a little bit more prominently in this award season. And it basically went direct to Netflix on the same day that Wicked opened in the movie theater.
I mean,
I wonder, you said, that Shakespeare was prolific in his time, and we've continued 400 and something years later to still do him. And like, maybe that will happen with August. Also with Shakespeare, we sort of do what the heck we want with it, right? Like, we can take a play like Pericles and like set it on a moon. Not that the production he worked on was set on the moon. And we do a lot of like cross-gender casting. I, for one, as a director, love to go in there and take these Shakespeare plays and just like crack them open and be like, you get a role, you get a role, you get a role, you get a role. Like I just love to blow it up. And I can't imagine that for August Wilson. And yet there was a production of Fences in Hong Kong. So I wonder, like, do you think in 400 years from now, people will be trying different things with Wilson's plays?
Yes, I think they will. The idea of that does not feel good to me, but I think that is entirely possible. That's the world we live in, where turn things on their head and try this, and we're not doing that anymore. Now we're doing this. That's how the world evolves and changes. So I think that could happen. But as someone who also writes, I write. I haven't produced anything yet. Coming soon. But as someone who writes, the story that I write is the story that I want to tell. But I guess once you put it out there, it no longer belongs to you. It's whoever decides that they want to tell the story with you, as long as you're here. And then when you're gone, then they'll tell it the way that they want to. So I'm to echo the Erykah Badu quote. I'm an artist. He's an artist. And I know for a fact that he was sensitive about his shit, because he would show up at a production, and if you missed a line, August Wilson I'm talking about would correct you post-show. You know, this is how I wrote it. This is what I said. That's what's supposed to come out. So, yeah. Well,
and, already some liberties have been taken, or we are already sort of re-scripting the narrative. He notoriously said on record out loud that his plays needed a Black director, and his estate, about 10, 15 years ago, let Bartlett Sher do the Broadway revival of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. So already we see that, and certainly once something falls into the public domain, there's really no control of how it happens. Right. I feel like you, like it makes me a little uneasy to think about somebody just totally going in there and just like mucking it up, because these plays were written to do a very specific thing. And I have to think then, like, okay, well, the Henriade, Shakespeare's Henriade was written to do a very specific thing. And I find myself here, 400 years later, like, yeah, but like Shakespeare was writing under certain conditions. So like the boys had to play women because women weren't allowed to act. But I bet if women could, Shakespeare would have wanted the women to, but I don't know. So I could imagine 400 years from now, somebody being like, well, but August was writing at a certain time and he didn't know that this would be the thing. And I think, wouldn't it just be so, well, I shouldn't phrase that as a question because you're already going to be like, no. But the idea that like a company of women just like a whole company of women doing Fences would be just like so amazing. Like that would just be so delicious, mostly because, my Troy is good. My Troy is so good. I'm like, that would be so sick. Come on, Miss Kathleen Ridley. Come on. That would just be so amazing. And I don't think the estate is going for that anytime soon. And certainly 2025 is not the moment.
No, absolutely not.
Not the moment. But when these plays fall into the public domain, it will be interesting. And I think we've already seen, like, in certain productions, individual actors kind of teasing the idea of like, well, what if this character is queer? Like August didn't overtly, blatantly write that for most of his characters. I mean, Ma Rainey accepted, but like, what if Doker is queer, right? Like that, like Sam Jackson wasn't giving no queer Doker, but what if? So I think already in the 30 plus years that some of these plays have existed, we see a little fudgy happening. And once they fall out of public domain, who knows who's going to be directing these plays? Who knows who's going to, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Like maybe there'll be like a play on Wilson. I certainly think that it could be fun to not like mess with Wilson's plays, but to be inspired by them to then like explode like a whole new body of work in the way that Shakespeare, people have more like Shakespeare adjacent, you know, in the way that Marcus's Lear is very Marcus's, you know, he wrote a whole character, the Black Queen. Shakespeare didn't write a Black Queen in Lear. Marcus did.
Yeah.
And from that, you have Valina in your ear, right? Like that is something you will hold with you. So certainly I could get into like a little Corey fanfic, like what happened to Corey after Fences, or like what happened to Tanya after King Headley. Like,
yeah,
that could be interesting.
I would be in favor of anything like that. Just make it your own. I'm just don't take what he's done and redo that. Make it your own.
If somebody's gonna let me play Troy, though, I'm gonna get in drag and I'm gonna play Troy.
I understand. I completely understand. As an artist, I understand.
Well, you know, you named it. Romeo and Juliet is my favorite play of all time ever. Fences is my second favorite play of all time ever. Yeah, and it's for many of the same reasons you shared, that immediately it calls to me. I immediately recognize Troy. So for you, where you're like, oh, Corey is my dad. I'm like, Troy is my dad. I'm Corey. You know, like, and I get that from all of August's plays, that this is my family, my extended family, that I have a place in the lineage of these works. Yeah. But I have no intention, personally, as a director, to go in there and fuss with them, because I, even with my desire to see more female characters and that sort of thing, I think it's okay that August Wilson was writing by, for, and about the Black male experience. I think that is okay. Not only okay, but wonderful and necessary.
Absolutely.
And
I remember, I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No, this is your episode.
When I was young man, I don't think I was even 30. I went to this seminar at UC Berkeley, and all these who became luminaries were there. Keenan Ivory Wayans was there. Julie Dash was there, who did Daughters of the Dust. She was there. This guy who had done this movie called Chameleon Street, whose name escapes me right now, he was there. I think it was Reggie Hudlin. I believe he was there. They were all here. We were all sitting in a room, and we were just talking about, you know, making films and telling stories, the whole thing. And I remember Keenan Ivory said something that I've never forgotten. And he said, if you don't like the images that you're seeing on the screen, make your own. He says, get whatever you have. If it's like a Super 8 camera, whatever you have, get out there and do it yourself. And that's always been my thing. It's like, if this is this person's story, and you're like, well, it was okay, but I'm like, if he did that, go tell that story. Go make that story. Go write that, shoot that, make that. So it's taken me a while to come around to trying to do that for myself, but but that's ego, because the athlete's ego is something that I also lean on as I do this, as I pursue it. Because with somebody, if I'm not cast in a particular role that I wanted, the next one, a vengeance, a passion, I'm attacking the next one. So there's that.
I think that's great. And I think also that that's sort of a lovely note to end on, this idea of make your own. You know, that if you aren't finding the images that you want to see, or you're not hearing the stories, make your own. Yeah. And just to bring it full circle, since Shakespeare is now in the public domain, right? Has been. There was no such thing, right? Shakespeare is right. We can do things like Marcus did with Lear. We can take known characters, familiar tropes, and rework them so that they are telling the stories that we want to tell and showing the representation. Or we certainly can interrogate them and take the parts that are useful and discard the parts that aren't.
Yes.
Michael, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
I am grateful for the invitation. Like I said, when you asked me, I was like, well, everybody else has gone to school and they have these, like, they're doctors and they are degreed in this art form. And I don't have that, but I've certainly enjoyed sitting down with you and sharing my experience.
You have experiential wisdom.
Okay, now you're trying to be gentle and call me old, but all right, I'll take that.
You
experiential wisdom.
You've done the work. And I have to say that the list of actors who've had the opportunity to perform both Shakespeare and Wilson is a narrow list. They're out there, Viola Davis, but it's a narrow list. And then we add to that you also have had the good fortune to work on living writers, which we didn't even get to in this episode, like Marcus Garley, Dominique Morisseau.
Yes.
You know that there's a lot that you have gotten to do and be a part of, and being there for the generation of new work, right?
Yes.
That's something that you asked a question about or mentioned one day in rehearsal, is now immortalized in, Marcus's Lear. Yeah. So it was an honor to have you.
Thank you. Honored to be your guest.
Well, thanks. We'll do it again sometime.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you next week.